Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for today because we have a topic that I think every single person listening right now is desperate to hear about. We are talking about speed. We are talking about efficiency. We are talking about how to stop wasting time and actually see results.
That is right, Tom. It is one of the most frustrating feelings in the world to study and feel like you are standing still. You know that feeling where you work hard for months, but when you try to speak, the words just stick in your throat? Today, we are going to break that cycle. We are talking about how I improved my English 10 times faster and how our listeners can do it too.
10 times faster. That is a massive claim, Ria. I mean, honestly, when I hear people say that, I usually get a little skeptical. It sounds like magic. It sounds too good to be true. Is it really possible to speed up the process that much? Or is it just a catchy title?
I completely understand the skepticism, Tom. I used to feel the exact same way. I remember looking at people who spoke fluent English and thinking they must have some special brain or some magical talent that I did not have. But let me tell you, the 10 times faster concept is not about magic. It is about friction. Imagine you're trying to push a car up a hill. That is how most people learn English. They are fighting against gravity, fighting against boredom, and fighting against fear. What I did, and what we are going to talk about today, is how to turn the car around and drive it down the hill. It's about momentum. When you remove the friction, you naturally go 10 times faster.
I love that analogy. Driving down the hill sounds a lot more fun than pushing a car up a hill. I think a lot of our listeners feel like they're pushing that heavy car every single day. They have the grammar books, the vocabulary lists, the apps, but it feels like work. It feels heavy. So take us back to the beginning. Before you found this faster way, what was your English learning life like?
Oh, Tom, it was painful. It was genuinely painful. I was the classic student who knew all the rules but could not order a coffee. I spent years in classrooms. I would memorize lists of verbs, I would take tests and get good grades, but the absolute moment a real human being spoke to me in English, I froze. My heart would pound, my hands would sweat, and my mind would go completely blank. I felt so small. I felt like all those years of studying were a waste. I was learning, but I was learning at a snail's pace. I calculated that at the rate I was going, it would take me 20 years to be fluent. I did not have 20 years. I wanted to live my life now.
That is such a relatable feeling. The gap between what you know on paper and what you can actually do in a real conversation is huge. It destroys your confidence. So what changed? What was the turning point where you realized you had to do something different?
The turning point was actually a moment of total embarrassment. I was at a social gathering, and someone asked me a simple question about my job. I had the sentence in my head. I knew the grammar, but I was so terrified of making a mistake that I just smiled and nodded. I didn't say anything. I went home that night and I cried. I was so angry with myself. I realized that the traditional method of studying was failing me because it was treating English like a subject to be studied, like math or history. But language isn't a subject. Language is a behavior. It is a physical act. That night, I decided to throw away my textbooks. I decided I was going to stop studying English and start living in English.
Stop studying and start living. That sounds powerful, but what does that actually look like on a Tuesday morning when you have to go to work or school? How do you practically make that shift?
It starts with what I call the immersion bubble. You see, most people live their lives in their native language and then visit English for 30 minutes a day when they open a textbook. That's why it's slow. To go 10 times faster, you have to invert that. You need to live in English and only visit your native language when absolutely necessary. I started by changing everything in my environment, my phone, my computer, my social media feeds. I made a rule that if I wanted to be entertained, if I wanted to watch a movie or a YouTube video, it had to be in English. No exceptions.
I have heard people suggest changing your phone language, but you took it further. You mentioned entertainment. This is a big one because I think people view learning as work, and entertainment as relaxation. You're saying merge them. But didn't you get tired? Watching a movie in a language you don't fully understand can be exhausting.
That is a great question. Yes, in the beginning, it was tiring. My brain was working overtime. But here is the secret, Tom. The emotional connection makes the brain learn faster. When you are reading a textbook about John going to the library, you don't care about John. You have zero emotional attachment to him. But when you are watching a gripping series or listening to a podcast about a topic you love, or watching a funny interview with your favorite actor, your brain is desperate to understand. That desire, that emotional need to know what happens next, acts like a supercharger for memory. I stopped trying to memorize words and started trying to understand stories. When you learn a word because it was the punchline of a joke that made you laugh, you never forget it. That is efficiency. That is speed.
That makes so much sense. Emotion is the glue for memory. If you are bored, the information just slides right off your brain. If you are engaged, it sticks. So you changed your input. You started flooding your brain with real, enjoyable English. But what about speaking? That is usually the hardest part. You said you used to freeze up. How did you get over that fear and start speaking fluent sentences?
This is the most critical part of the 10 times faster method. Input is fuel, but speaking is the engine. I realized I couldn't wait until I was perfect to start speaking. I had to speak to get perfect. But I didn't have anyone to practice with every day. So I started talking to myself. I know it sounds a little crazy, but it changed my life. I started narrating my day. I would be making breakfast and I would say out loud, okay, I am cracking 2 eggs. The pan is hot. Where is the salt?
Talking to yourself. I love that. It takes the pressure off, right? Because nobody is judging you. If you make a mistake, only the eggs know about it.
Exactly. The eggs don't care about your grammar. It creates a safe space to experiment. I call it the shadowing life. I wasn't just repeating phrases. I was building the neural pathways between my brain and my mouth. You see, a lot of people can understand English perfectly, but can't speak it. That is because the connection between the listening center of the brain and the motor skills of the mouth is weak. The only way to strengthen it is to physically move your mouth. By narrating my life, I was getting hours of speaking practice every single day without paying for a tutor or feeling embarrassed in front of strangers.
I can see how that would build speed. Instead of translating in your head from your native language to English, you're training your brain to just reach for the English words directly because you're using them in real-time context.
Precisely. And to add to that, I started doing something called imitation jamming. I would listen to a podcast, just like this one, and I would pick one speaker. Let's say I picked you, Tom. I would listen to a sentence, pause it, and then try to say it exactly how you said it. Not just the words, but the emotion, the speed, the intonation. If you sounded excited, I tried to sound excited. If you paused, I paused. This taught me the music of the language. English has a rhythm. When you learn the rhythm, you stop sounding like a robot and you start flowing. That flow is what makes you feel fluent. And feeling fluent gives you the confidence to speak more. It's a positive feedback loop.
The music of the language. That is a beautiful way to put it. We often get so obsessed with the bricks, the vocabulary words, that we forget about the melody. So we have immersion, we have narrating your life, and we have imitation. These are all things you can do alone, which is great news for our listeners who might be shy. But what about the mindset? You mentioned earlier about friction and fear. How did you handle the days when you felt like you weren't making progress? Because even with a fast method, there are bad days.
Oh, there were plenty of bad days. Days where I felt like my tongue was too big for my mouth or I just couldn't understand anything. The key to maintaining speed is actually forgiveness. This sounds strange, but perfectionism is the enemy of speed. If you stop every time you make a mistake to analyze it and beat yourself up, you're hitting the brakes. I decided to adopt a mindset of messy progress. I allowed myself to make mistakes. I actually celebrated them. If I said something wrong, instead of feeling shame, I would laugh and say, "Wow, that was creative English." By removing the fear of being wrong, I spoke more. And because I spoke more, I corrected myself faster. It's about quantity over quality in the beginning. You have to churn through the bad English to get to the good English.
Churn through the bad English to get to the good English. I want to put that on a t-shirt. That is brilliant. It is like turning on a tap that hasn't been used in a while. The brown, rusty water has to come out first before the clear water flows. But most people turn off the tap as soon as they see the brown water because they think something is wrong.
That is the perfect metaphor, Tom. Yes! People see the mistakes and think, I am not good at this. No, you are just clearing the pipes. Keep the tap running. And another thing that accelerated my learning was narrowing my focus. I stopped trying to learn English as a whole. English is too big. It has a million words. You cannot learn it all at once. I focused on my English. I wrote down the topics that I actually talk about in my real life. My job, my hobbies, my family, my dreams. I became an expert in talking about Ria's life. I didn't worry about learning vocabulary for space travel or medical surgery because I don't talk about those things. By focusing on what was relevant to me, I became fluent in my own reality very quickly.
That is so smart. We waste so much time learning words we will never use. I remember in school learning the names of farm equipment. I have never used those words since, but I use words about technology, feelings, and food every day. So you personalized the curriculum.
Exactly. I curated my own language. And once I felt comfortable talking about my own life, I naturally started expanding into other topics. But that core confidence came from knowing I could handle a conversation about myself. It grounded me. It made me feel safe. And feeling safe is essential for a brain to learn. A stressed brain cannot absorb information. If you are stressed, you are in survival mode, not learning mode. So anything you can do to make the process fun, personal, and safe will automatically make it faster.
I want to touch on the 10x part again. A lot of people might think, okay, I will do this for a week and I will be fluent. We need to manage expectations. When you say 10x faster, it doesn't mean instantaneous. It means efficient. How long did it take you, once you switched to this lifestyle method, to really feel that shift?
That is a very important distinction. It is not magic, it is math. If you study the traditional way for 2 hours a week, and I live the immersion way for 4 hours a day, I am getting more exposure in 1 week than you get in months. That is where the 10x comes from. For me, the first month felt chaotic. My brain was adjusting. But by month 3, things clicked. I remember waking up one morning and realizing I had dreamt in English. That was the moment I knew it had gone deep. It wasn't just surface level anymore. So to answer you, within 3 to 6 months of this intensity, I made more progress than I had in the previous 5 years. It requires a lifestyle change, though. You can't do this halfway. You have to jump in the deep end.
Dreaming in English. That is the holy grail for learners. It means your subconscious is processing the language. That's incredible. I want to ask about listening skills specifically. A lot of our listeners say they can read well, but when they listen to native speakers talking fast, they get lost. Did your method help with that specific problem?
It is the only thing that helps. You cannot learn to understand fast speech by reading slow text. It is impossible. My method of watching movies without subtitles was brutal at first, but it forced my ears to adapt. I started listening for chunks of sound rather than individual words. native speakers link words together. We don't say, "What do you want to do?" We say, "What do you want to do?" If you are looking for the individual words, you will never hear them. By exposing myself to hours of natural, fast, messy, real dialogue, my brain started to decode these sound chunks. I stopped translating in my head and started just understanding the meaning. It's like a muscle. You have to lift the heavy weights to get strong. Listening to slow, scripted audio is like lifting a pencil. It won't build muscle. You have to listen to the fast stuff, even if you only understand 20% at first.
That is scary advice, but it's true. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to be okay with not understanding everything. I think the need to understand 100% of every sentence holds people back. They pause the audio every 2 seconds to look up a word.
Oh, looking up every word is a disaster for speed. It breaks the flow. It turns a fun story into a research project. I made a rule. I would only look up a word if I heard it 3 times and I still couldn't guess the meaning from the context. If I heard it once, I let it go. This trained me to be a detective. I had to use the context clues, the tone of voice, the situation to guess the meaning. And guess what? That is how we learned our native language as children. We didn't have dictionaries, we guessed. And usually, we guessed right. Trusting your intuition is a huge part of learning faster.
Trust your intuition. We have these amazing brains that are designed to recognize patterns, but we get in the way with our logic and our fears. Ria, as we start to wrap up this conversation, I am thinking about the person listening right now who feels stuck. Maybe they're older, maybe they feel like they have missed their chance, or maybe they just feel exhausted by the process. What is the one thing you want them to do today? Not tomorrow, but today, to start moving 10 times faster.
I want them to fall in love. I know that sounds cheesy, but I mean it. Fall in love with something in English. Don't look for a textbook, look for a passion. If you love cooking, go watch a MasterChef episode in English. If you love football, watch the commentary in English. If you love romance novels, buy one in English. Find the thing that makes you forget you are learning a language. When the content is more important than the language happens automatically. Today, find one thing you enjoy and consume it in English. Do not treat it as study time. Treat it as me time. Treat it as a reward. If you can shift your relationship with English from a chore to a joy, the speed will take care of itself. You won't have to force yourself to practice. You will want to. And when you want to do something, you improve infinitely faster.
That is such a beautiful message. It really shifts the power back to the learner. You aren't a student submitting to a teacher. You are a person exploring your interests. I also want to touch on the community aspect. You mentioned doing this alone, but did you eventually reach out to others?
I did. Once I built that core confidence through talking to myself and shadowing, I went online. I found language exchange partners. But because I had already practiced so much on my own, I wasn't starting from zero. I was able to hold a conversation. And that connection, looking into another person's eyes and being understood, that is the ultimate reward. That is the fuel that keeps you going for the rest of your life. But you don't need to wait for that to start. You can start today, in your kitchen with your headphones on. You have everything you need right now.
You have everything you need right now. That is the truth. We often look for the perfect course or the perfect teacher, but the tools are right in front of us. Ria, your story is so inspiring because it is so practical. You didn't move to an English-speaking country. You didn't spend thousands of dollars. You just changed your habits and your mindset.
That is it, Tom. Geography doesn't matter anymore. With the internet, you can build an English city in your bedroom. It is a choice. It is a decision to wake up every day and say, today, I am an English speaker. Not, I am trying to learn English, but I am an English speaker who is still improving. That identity shift changes everything.
Identity shift. I think that is the key. Stop saying, I am a student, and start saying, I am a speaker. Ria, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel motivated, and I'm a native speaker. I feel like I want to go learn a new language now just to use these techniques.
Go for it, Tom. It works for any language. But for everyone listening, English is special because the world is full of amazing English content. The resources are endless. The only limit is your curiosity.
Thank you so much for sharing your secrets with us today. To everyone listening, we don't want you to just listen to this episode and nod your head. We want you to take action. Pick one of the techniques Ria mentioned. Maybe it's the immersion bubble. Maybe it's narrating your breakfast. Maybe it's watching a movie without subtitles. Pick one and do it today.
Yes, just start. Momentum is everything. You will be amazed at how fast you can go once you take the brakes off. Believe in yourself. You have a voice, and the world wants to hear it.
What a perfect way to end. You have a voice and the world wants to hear it. Thank you for tuning in to Real English Voices. Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep speaking. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone. Happy learning.
See you next time.
You know what, Ria? We have a little more time, and I really want to circle back to one specific thing you mentioned, because I think it is the most actionable technique for our listeners. You talked about shadowing and imitation jamming. Can we break that down step by step? I feel like people hear the word shadowing a lot, but they do it wrong.
I am so glad you brought that up, Tom. You are absolutely right. Most people do shadowing wrong, and then they say it doesn't work. The biggest mistake people make is they try to read and speak at the same time. That is just reading aloud. That is not shadowing.
Okay, so clarify the difference. If I am reading a transcript and reading it out loud, why isn't that shadowing?
Because when you read, your eyes are doing the work. Your brain is recognizing letters and converting them to sound. But when you speak in a real conversation, you don't have a script in front of you. You have to rely on your ears and your memory. True shadowing is an auditory exercise, not a visual one. You need to listen, pause, and repeat what you heard, not what you saw.
That is a huge distinction. So walk us through the perfect shadowing session. I am sitting at my desk. I have my phone. What do I do?
Okay, here is the protocol. Step 1. Find a piece of audio that is slightly easy for you. If it is too hard, you will get frustrated. It should be someone whose voice you like. Step 2. Listen to the whole thing once just to understand the meaning. Don't speak yet. Just enjoy it. Step 3. This is where the work begins. Play one sentence or even half a sentence. Pause the audio.
Okay, paused.
Now, repeat exactly what you heard. But here's the trick. Record yourself. Use the voice memo app on your phone. Record yourself saying that sentence.
Oh, recording yourself. That is painful. Nobody likes the sound of their own voice.
I know, it is cringeworthy, but it is the fastest way to improve. You record it, and then, step 4, you play the original audio, and then you play your recording immediately after. You compare them. You have to be your own critic. You ask, did my pitch go up at the end like his did? Did I pronounce the th sound clearly? Was I too slow?
So you're basically playing a game of spot the difference with your own voice.
Exactly. And when you find the difference, you try again. You keep doing that one sentence until you can't hear the difference between you and the native speaker. That might take 10 tries, it might take 20. But when you finally nail it, when you finally match that rhythm, your brain locks it in. You aren't just memorizing a sentence, you're mastering a sound pattern. And that pattern will appear in thousands of other sentences.
That is intense. That is definitely not passive learning. That is a workout.
It is a workout, but think about it, Tom. If you go to the gym and lift a feather for an hour, you get no muscles. If you lift a heavy weight for 10 minutes, you get strong. Shadowing is the heavy weight. You only need to do it for 10 or 15 minutes a day. If you do that focused, high-intensity practice, you will improve 10 times faster than someone who just listens passively for 2 hours.
That explains the 10x concept perfectly. It's about the density of the practice, quality over quantity.
And there's another layer to this, emotional shadowing. Don't just copy the sounds, copy the feeling. If the speaker is angry, you be angry. If they're whispering, you whisper. This connects the language to your emotional center. I remember I used to shadow scenes from movies where characters were arguing. I would be in my room shouting in English. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy.
I can imagine. Ria's fighting with someone again.
No, I'm just practicing English. But it worked because when you shout or laugh or whisper, you drop your inhibitions. You stop overthinking. You just become the character. And acting is a great way to trick your brain into fluency. When you're acting, you're not learning, you're performing. And performers are confident.
I love that. Fake it till you make it, but with structure.
Yes, and eventually you stop acting. The character becomes you, the English becomes yours.
Ria, this has been a master class. I really hope our listeners take this specific advice. Don't just listen to us today. Shadow us. Pause this podcast right now. Go back 10 seconds and try to say exactly what I just said.
Do it. Mimic Tom's voice. Mimic my voice. Have fun with it. Make it a game. The more playful you are, the faster you learn.
Thank you again, Ria. This deep dive into shadowing was exactly what we needed to make the 10x promise real.
My pleasure. I can't wait to hear the success stories from our listeners.
Until next time, keep shadowing, keep speaking, and keep driving that car down the hill.
Bye.